Hey guys, Jesse here with Canine Perspective, and I'm back with another pack walk, joined by a couple of OGs. We have Louie and Dugan here, who I've known since they were puppies, since 2018, if I remember correctly. We got Wrinkles and Smokey, who I've known since they were puppies as well, since 2020. And then we have Gretchen, who we met a little bit later on in her life, who's a recent pack member, who comes to daycare all the time and has done training as well with us. So today I wanted to talk more about dog behavior, understanding it. I think it helps alleviate a lot of frustration. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings in the dog training world or the way things were approached. I do come from Cesar Milan methodology, which is probably why I think the way that well, not probably, is the reason why I think the way that I think. So if we take things like aggression and reactivity, which are two very common behaviors that I deal with as a dog trainer, is that when I'm describing the behaviors, the words are usually attached to something. So let's say, for example, reactivity. You may have heard of the term leash reactivity, which is super common. Dogs that are reactive on the leash, obviously. But then behind that, it's like, well, why is the dog being reactive? Is it being reactive because it's scared? Is it being reactive because it's nervous, it's anxious? So then we get like fear reactivity, nervous reactivity, so on and so forth, right? Same thing with aggression. We have fear aggression, anxiety aggression, resource guarding aggression, territorial aggression, maternal aggression, right? Like there's all these terms to help us define what's fueling the aggression. And it's important because, for example, I just had a conversation this past weekend with a client that it was a consult. And her dog had 2 moments of aggression out of a lot of instances of aggression that she thought were unprovoked. And when she explained to me the scenarios, because she thought the dog was unpredictable, in my head, I'm seeing what's going on, and I'm like, nope, these things were not unprovoked. They were provoked. You just didn't understand how they were provoked, and you probably didn't see the signs. Okay. And I think last time I spoke about sudden rage syndrome, right? That the girlfriend of a client threw that term at me because she said that the dog's aggression was unexplained. But then when I talked to the boyfriend, and it turns out that when they had moved in together, the dog was already growling and showing signs of tension to her dog. And I was like, well, that's territorial aggression. So that's no longer sudden range, or like unprovoked, or what's the word? Unexplained. There's a word that people always they use all the time, and I'm blanking out on it. But once I heard that, I'm like, oh no, this is definitely territorial aggression. Like he's bullying the other dog because it's his home. Like the new dog moved into the current home that the dog, my client's dog, was already residing in. So then my client's dog started to bully her dog. So that's all territorial stuff. So it's not out of nowhere. It's not out of the blue. Like there was clear signs of what was going on. But because it didn't look like her dog was doing anything wrong, it was, unprovoked, so to speak. Okay. So with this newer client, she was in the living room, if I remember correctly, with her friend. She had her feet on the table. Her dog was underneath her friend's feet. And then her friend moved her feet, and I think the consult had moved her feet, which moved the table. And then when her friend looked down, her dog was looking at her weird. So then she called it out. But then instead of just like waiting to see what happens, she then reached down to pet the dog. And then when she pulled back, the dog went after her. Okay. So I said, well, it sounds like when she moved her feet or the table moved, it disturbed the dog, and the dog didn't like it, and then looked up at your friend in one way or another. Your friend then put social pressure on the dog by petting him, which is not something we would do, especially in the moment where we think the dog's tense. And I understand why the human does it. The human does it to break the tension, but all it does is create more tension. So then the dog rolled over, kind of giving a submissive posture. And then when she pulled back, the dog went after her. I was like, sounds like the dog gave a submissive posture because he was going under stress, and he was like, hey, I'm not a threat. But when the friend pulled back, the dog decided to move forward and go after her, to tell her like not to do that. Okay. So when I told her that, she's like, oh, that makes sense. I was like, right. So it wasn't unprovoked. The other situation was a friend was taking care of the dog. He was standing by the door whining, and the friend goes to let him out the door to go potty, and the dog goes after the friend on the approach. So she's like, well, that was unprovoked. I'm like, well, it depends, because the first thing I asked was the friend approaching the dog talking like in a high-pitched voice, like a sweet voice, which a lot of people tend to do without knowing before this happened, or maybe he was guarding the back door or guarding whatever door that the friend was approaching. So we don't know what happened there with the friend, if they were talking in high-pitched voice or whatnot. But that energy is unstable energy for dogs, and a lot of them don't like it, and I know people do it just because it's how we're conditioned. But once I explained these things to her, she's like, oh, okay. She's like, this makes a lot of sense now. But she was getting really worried because she thought these were unprovoked attacks. She thought there was no sign. I'm like, chances are there were signs, you just didn't see the signs, okay? So when we start to look at dog behavior, for example, I had a client email me about his dog's reactivity. If he's at the park playing fetch and a dog approaches, sometimes his dog will run towards the approaching dog, keep straight, the approaching dog, and be reactive, and he wanted to correct it. And I was like, well, it sounds like what he's doing is he's claiming the space, right? He's being territorial to a degree. He's telling the dog, hey, I don't want you to approach us while we're playing. And then, you know, he's not doing it for the sake of doing it. He's doing it to keep the dog away because he doesn't want the dog in the space. And you got a guy walking behind you, Nate, just heads up. Walking into the space. So I was like, you can correct it to stop the behavior. But then what may happen is if that dog continues to approach and we do not address the oncoming dog, because your dog has already said, like, I don't want this dog here, then things can escalate, because now the dog's going to feel more stressed. Because he's thinking, okay, well, I can't, you told me I can't take the lead here, so I'm not going to do anything. But if that dog continues to approach our space, if you don't do anything, now I'm going to be more stressed out because no one's doing anything, and it just kind of snowballs from there, okay? If we take that same reactivity and we look at it like in the context of a yard, again, that's territorial reactivity. It can be annoying and bad, like if the dog is barking at passing by dogs, people walking their kids in a stroller, stuff like that, right? But then one day you got a bad guy trying to enter the yard or something, then all of a sudden the barking is good, right? So it's all in how you look at it, and once you start to understand where these behaviors are coming from, things start to become more clear. So watch your back. So a very common, we're gonna go straight, thing that I get is human aggression, and I'll ask them, you know, give me an instance of the aggression, and they'll say, oh, my dog was eating and it attacked me unprovoked. And I was like, all right, well, describe what was going on. You don't know how many times I've heard, oh, you know, I put the food bowl down, my dog is eating, and then I put my hand in their bowl. And I'm like, that was definitely provoked. They're like, oh, but it's my dog, I should be able to do whatever I want. I'm like, that's not how that works, okay? And that's also not human aggression, that's resource guarding. It just happened to be against or towards a human. And this is another situation where, again, the client's telling me it was completely unprovoked. And when I get more details, I'm like, nope, this was clearly provoked. Don't put your hand in your dog's bowl. I don't do that. I don't recommend that people do that. There's no purpose to it. And I know that people say, like, oh, well, if I have kids, my kid's going to go near the dog's bowl, and I'll tell them you need to be a better parent and you need to be more strict because that puts your child at great risk. That's all about rules and boundaries. That's a story for another day, right? But again, we're getting these, I'm getting these consultations, I'm getting these emails, oh, my dog's aggressive, it's unprovoked, there's no warning signs and stuff. And it's not that at all. It's that the human isn't understanding dog behavior, so it looks unprovoked. The human goes, I wasn't doing anything bad, I wasn't hitting my dog, I wasn't hurting my dog, I simply had my hand in the bowl. I'm like, but that's what provoked the dog. The dog says, get your hand out my bowl. And I tell people, I go, if you're eating at a restaurant, do you want the waiter to come in and stick his hand in your plate? Like, you know, you would complain, you'd be like, what the hell's going on here? But because the human goes, well, I wasn't hurting the dog, I wasn't being mean to the dog, or what have you, they're thinking they're not doing anything wrong. But sometimes it can be something just as subtle as moving your feet. And if the dog is a bully, which this recent consult was, he became a bully because he was calling the shots on a lot of things. I go, now he's bullying for things as simple as moving your feet. And this is something I've seen in the past before. Or clients will say like, oh, if we're sleeping and I move the dog will growl, or the dog will, you know, attack or whatever. And again, to the human, it looks unprovoked because they're not doing anything wrong. They're not doing anything bad, so to speak, from a human's point of view. But from the dog's point of view, they're going, don't bother me when I'm sleeping, okay? So whenever you think about reactivity or aggression, I want you to think, you know, why, where is it coming from? If you can, think over the situation and try to find what the trigger was. It could be something super subtle, as you know, you just place your arm or your hand right next to the dog while they were sleeping on the couch, something like that. And then once you start to understand, they go like, oh, that was most likely resource guarding or territorial behavior, and you know, X, Y, Z. You know, you start to lose a lot of that frustration because we know where the behaviors are coming from. So I'm Jesse with Canine Perspective. Thank you for watching.